So we were asked to fix three problems with pensions. One was poor performance. Secondly, a lack of trust in IFAs, wealth managers, fund managers. And thirdly was lack of communication. In other words, you saw them infrequently. There were smaller other problems around this. Now in coming videos I'll explain how we did it. But I guess the trust, communication and performance issues, to some extent they could be framed like this. Forgive the humor, I apologize. But this is how we did it. So we said, look, there's clearly a trust problem. Let's think outside the box. What if we got rid of the fund manager entirely? Who's the one person that, if you could, you would actually trust? And that came down to the person most interested in your pension, which is you. But of course, you don't trust yourself with your pension because you don't have the expertise or the data and information you need to use that expertise. So we said, well, if we can get rid of the fund manager, then it gets rid of a lot of the trust issues, but we're going to have to replace it by giving the individual the knowledge on how to drive a car, basically how to drive their pension. But we'll have to do this. There's no point removing one problem with another problem which is even worse or bigger. So we said, well, we need to be able to do it almost like an automated car, self-driving car. Or, you pick one of these phones out of the box, you know how to use it. It doesn't even come with an instruction manual. It has to be that easy. So when we give the data and the knowledge, we made sure it was as easy as getting an iPhone out of the pack, or a Samsung phone, Android phone, and you just know intuitively how to use it, okay? Because the instructions are so simple on the phone itself. So that was one way in which we removed the trust issue, which is you're now able to trust yourself because you've got transparency of data and you know what to do, what to buy based upon that, and it saves you time just as easily as it is to set one of these babies up, okay? But that still leaves some critical problems, which, of course, well, what about communication? You might say, well, I can communicate with myself all the time. No, you want to still communicate with somebody with some degree of knowledge and expertise. So we said, well, what if we do that by giving them access to expertise anytime they want, unlimited for life? And we said, well, surely that's going to raise a cost issue, which also goes back to the trust issue. So we reduced that problem by saying, well, let's not have ongoing costs. I mean, we'd completely ripped up the pension fund management or wealth management script, which is you've got to have fund managers that manage money. You've got to keep charging people fees forever. We said, what if we got rid of all of that? Okay. So what we said is, well, you won't have ongoing fees. You just have one fee for life. So it becomes a no-brainer that you know forever how much you've paid, and you know whether it's economical or not, because you can see into the future. You can say, well, actually, this is a no-brainer. So we did it that way as well. Now, I go into great depth on each one of these later and how we came to these behavioral changes, these psychological changes to make it available. What about performance? Surely if you're doing it yourself, you can't perform better than the professional fund managers. I mean, just a reminder of what we're talking about. Okay, now this was actually, funnily enough, the easiest one to crack, because the professional fund managers, we know from data, which is available in both the United States and the UK, they're basically guaranteed to underperform the indices, the benchmarks. So even if we just taught people to match the benchmark by, for instance, just buying the benchmark, and we go beyond teaching them that, we show them how to cherry pick stocks if they wish, undervalued companies, growing companies, then surely then that's the least difficult hurdle, the outperformance, because we know fund managers underperform. And people say, then this comes as a shock to people, and in future videos, again, I'll cover this in more detail. Why is it that fund managers underperform? And usually the reason fund managers underperform is they've got their hands tied behind their backs. In other words, they've got so much capital that their parent firm has said to them they can only pick companies from a certain geography, like only British companies, only companies for a certain style, like undervalued companies. And because they've got so much capital, they can't put it in, say, some of the high growth companies, which might be too small to put money into, which private investors can, because private investors don't have billions to invest. So what happens? There are very few companies they can ever pick from. And of course, they're bound to underperform a benchmark, which includes more companies. then so we got around that problem of underperformance first by being assured that the fund managers are so going to perform so poorly anyway, we can beat them. But also what we did is we just gave people all the data and said, look, these are undervalued, these are high growth, these are generating income, these are the ones which tick all three boxes, select those. And then we explained to them for their risk appetite how long they would hold, 12 months typically, and when they might want to monitor once a fortnight typically. So it wasn't consuming so much time. Anyway, this is a summary, an executive summary of how we solved many of those pension problems that people were facing. Like I said, lack of communication, lack of trust, lack of performance, expensive fees, by just turning everything on its head. I call it the Great Investments Program. So if you don't want to be in this position, but you want to be in an empowered position where you take control and you keep all your money by getting rid of the fund manager, particularly if you're an entrepreneur or you're retired, you've got more time or more desire for control, or somebody who's just good at forward planning and knows what the future looks like, then please do get in touch. Have a look at alpeshpatel.com/links. I think you'll like it. Thank you very much.